studying the Word of God lately. It's an obsession and addiction. I have to go to bed to the Word. I wake up in the middle of the night wanting to listen to the Word. I wake up in the morning wanting more. I just cannot get enough. And the Lord is showing me so many things. Like, for example, remember when Jesus came to Jerusalem riding on a colt, and the crowds cried out, "Hosanna, Hosanna"? The first thing he did when he got to Jerusalem is he went to the temple grounds, and he just looked around and he observed. And he didn't do anything the first time he went to the temple. And then after that, he left with the disciples, and then he came across the fig tree, the unfruitful fig tree that would not bear fruit for him. And Jesus actually curses that fig tree for not bearing fruit. And then after that, he returns back to the temple in Jerusalem, and only then does he actually overturn the tables and rebuke the people and drive out the money changers and say this has turned into a den of thieves and it's supposed to be a house of prayer. So he actually saw what was going on in the temple in his first visit, but he didn't do anything yet. But what happened was he observed and he waited to hear from the Lord before moving. Also, there was a symbolic act when he came across the fig tree and he cursed it, because that fig tree, that unfruitful fig tree, represented Israel, and it represented the temple that turned into a den of thieves. It was all about commercial activity and had lost a sense of holiness and reverence for God. So everything the Lord does is very strategic. It just doesn't come out of nowhere. There's always a myriad of things going on. And it just amazed me when I saw that, wow, he went to the temple first, then he saw the fig tree, and then he went to the temple again, and that's when he cleared it out.
We see Jesus taking his position of authority in a triumphal entry into Jerusalem. Though he rides on a donkey, he is recognized as a king. The people cry out, "Hosanna, Hosanna," in adoration and praise. It's a beautiful scene. Then his first act is to go to the temple in Jerusalem and observe it. He says nothing, he does nothing, but simply observes. Then he leaves for Bethany with the disciples before it gets dark, and they spend the night there. The next day, they prepare to return to the temple in Jerusalem. We see at this point that Jesus becomes hungry. He sees a fig tree, but it bears no fruit for him. Jesus curses it. "May no one ever eat fruit from you again." Then they arrived at the temple, and Jesus violently rebukes the greedy merchants. He made a whip out of cords and drove all from the temple courts, both sheep and cattle. He scattered the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. He rebukes them, leaving them astonished. We see that Jesus had to violently clear the temple of its unfruitful activity. This is not a random series of events. Elohim is precise in every detail, especially in the timing of events. For the temple was symbolized by the unfruitful fig tree. Just as both the temple and the fruit trees symbolize Israel, the natural provides the shadow of the spiritual. Jesus, in effect, was making a powerful spiritual declaration over Israel. Both realms had to have wickedness and disobedience driven out and dealt with. Jesus came into Jerusalem as a king in authority, and he demonstrated that authority. After they left the temple, they came across the unfruitful fig tree once more, but it was now withered and it had dried up all the way down to the roots.
Many spread their coats in the road, and others spread leafy branches which they had cut from the fields. Those who went in front and those who followed were shouting,
Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the coming kingdom of our father David. Hosanna in the highest. Jesus entered Jerusalem and came into the temple. And after looking around at everything, he left for Bethany with the 12, since it was already late. On the next day, when they had left Bethany, he became hungry. Seeing at a distance a fig tree in leaf, he went to see if perhaps he would find anything on it. And when he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for it was not the season for figs. He said to it, "May no one ever eat fruit from you again." And his disciples were listening. Then they came to Jerusalem, and he entered the temple and began to drive out those who were buying and selling in the temple, and overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who were selling doves. And he would not permit anyone to carry merchandise through the temple. And he began to teach and say to them, "Is it not written, 'My house shall be called a house of prayer for all the nations'? But you have made it a robber's den?" The chief priests and the scribes heard this and began seeking how to destroy him, for they were afraid of him, for the whole crowd was astonished at his teaching. When evening came, they would go out of the city. As they were passing by in the morning, they saw the fig tree withered from the roots up.